Hello, and welcome back to the Arts and Minds Collective podcast. We are your hosts. I am Mackenzie Clough.
And I am Christine Thorpe.
Thank you for joining us for, episode 2. And we're planning on diving in a little bit more into the history of psychology and therapy. So we'll call this part 1 of what is mental health. We're going to be addressing questions, rumors, kind of go through like a timeline of psychology, especially since, and Christine and I were, kind of going over this too about, I think everybody just immediately thinks of Freud. So we're going to take it even a few steps further back in order
Yeah.
to kind of dig in a little more.
Yeah. It's interesting, Mackenzie, I don't think I shared this with you when we were planning this, but I had a really interesting conversation with one of my friends. Shout out to Karen. She subscribes to our podcast. Um, about some of the comments that have been made in our administration and stuff, and how really like a lot of people just don't know
hmm
about this stuff. And um it all feels, you really only get to see what is like out on social media and all the stuff, whereas like the professionals are like, oh no, there's like all of this background that you do not know about that I know about because I had to learn it, right? But like I think part of my idea with this was like, let's demystify this a little bit, and kind of give everybody a background on like, where did this come from, um how
I
did we
think
get
that's,
to
yeah.
here? Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
like, the most, like, infuriating part, is and I think, like, the most recent example that we've touched upon too is, like, the whole everybody has autism these days, and, I don't think anybody well, I'm sure that could be, like, its own separate conversation
I
of,
was gonna
like, the
say that's
history
gonna
of,
be
like
a separate part
Yeah, that's,
in
like,
part
part
yeah,
7.
yeah, of this little segmented series of what is mental health. Yes.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. I definitely, it's definitely on the list of being a part of this, part 1 of probably
yeah.
several, parts to kind of, like, just give a lot of history and background of, like, how did we get here? Um, and, like, just we both just decided, like, well, let's start with, like, the basics, right?
Mhm.
Like, because probably not a lot of people even know just the basics of psychology, right? And, like, where it started and how we got to here and how much it's changed.
The treatments, right? How it's gone
Yeah.
from and we'll get into it today, but, like, from it being so I mean, it's stuff that you see in, like, haunted houses now, right? I think the running joke of, like, we should bring back
Oh, yeah.
lobotomies and
The
things like
haunted
that.
asylum and, like,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
lobotomies and, um,
So this will be a
yeah.
fun one to get into. I think,
Yeah.
Christine has a background in teaching. I wanted to be a history teacher, so this is probably us tapping into, um, what we could have done if we weren't therapists.
Right? Well, what we could have done if teaching wasn't the way that it is.
Oh,
Shout out
man.
to the American, public school system.
Shout out to all the teachers for holding
Yeah,
it
shout out to
down.
the teachers, though, like, you
We'd
guys
be
are
literally lost without you.
you guys are heroes, unsung heroes. We love you. We need
Mhm.
more of you.
Yep.
I
Thank
also
you for using
completely
IEPs.
yes, I also completely understand why teachers are leaving the field
Mhm.
as
Oh
someone
god.
who was going to be a teacher.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, alrighty. Well,
Should we dive in?
yeah, since I like to info dump, how about we take turns?
Yes.
And I'll can I start with the ancient times
I
and
would
Middle
love for you
Ages?
to.
Okay, cool.
I love listening about Middle Ages, so I'm gonna be
Yeah,
locked in.
yeah. Um, so back in the ancient times, this is pre the 1700s. So birth of, human civilization to the 1700s. Anything mental health related, like, you know, anybody who was different in some way,
Mhm.
shape, or form that seemed to not be okay. It was either attributed to the supernatural, um, whether it be like shamanism or religious. I think personally, I think, and like this is just from like different readings that I've done. So like, don't quote me on this, but um, it is like an area of special interest. I think before the Middle Ages, before the introduction of like religion that we know, like, the Abrahamic religions,
Mhm.
um, I think, mental illness was more seen as like shamanism or um, like the oracles of Delphi. I think of that. Like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, or like,
Like
there
possession and
yeah, like there was the idea of like there was some people just could like see beyond like the veil or
mm,
something.
mhm.
Um, and they were treated more like irreverently versus like demonized. But then come the Middle Ages, the rise of Christianity, instead of it being like the shamanic oracle like, ooh, we need to like these are the people that are communing with the gods, it became demonic possessions.
Mhm.
Um and which means a lot of people were then being abused. The number one treatment back in the day, especially in ancient times, for people who were experiencing these things, if it became like too much or like was too painful for them, was called trephining, I think is how you say that, which is drilling holes in the
Oh
skulls
my god.
of people. We have evidence of this in like historic, bone records. Archaeologists have found this, and um, I think it was used for a lot of different treatments, but it was kind of like, oh, like if we open up the head, the
The
demon stuff will
ghost.
come, the ghosts will come
The
out.
ghost
It
will
will
come
not
out.
be bothered anymore. And sometimes people survived this, and a lot of times they didn't because no sterile conditions. How far do we
Mhm.
drill? Like all
Oh,
these things.
that's such a
Um,
good point. How long were the drills?
yeah. Uh, but like, when you don't know what's going on, gotta get rid of the ghosts in your brain.
Mhm.
Exorcisms were completed, you know, as simple as just throwing holy water and saying the name of Jesus and whatnot,
Mhm.
and as advanced to torture and being tied down and all these things. A lot of people who may have I don't know, I'm thinking of an episode of Outlander where um two boys go to this like ruined ruins of like a church that is supposedly haunted because if people go there they start to like go crazy and they get sick and die, and actually it's like there's a plant there that if you eat it it makes
Okay.
you get poisoned.
Mhm.
And instead of understanding that it was the plant that was poisoning the kid and that's why he was like having a fever and hallucinations and stuff, they thought it was a demon and they were just like trying to exorcise him, and the main character in Outlander was like, no, it's actually this because I am from the future and I know how like,
It's
science and stuff.
she's like a
Yeah.
nurse. That's the
Mhm.
whole okay, yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
And so, like, that's a great example of, like,
yeah.
it wasn't just mentally ill people, it was, like, anybody who might have been sick it was instead of it being like, "Oh, it could be this thing causing," it was like, "Nope, it's demons," or
Yeah.
it's whatever. And if you wasn't exorcism, then it was imprisonment. And prisons back in those days were not good.
It
The
hasn't
conditions were
gotten
not
better,
good.
but
Well, it's gotten better in the sense that at least they are dry and air conditioned and or heated.
mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
food is
Bare
fresh,
minimum, by the way.
bare
Bare
minimum.
minimum.
No one's needs were met in these prisons. They were thrown into a dark hole and just forgotten about. And so that was how a lot of mentally ill people were treated. I think in like maybe smaller communities for lesser, maybe less severe mental illness, it was more just like, oh, that person's like a little weird. I think of like the idea of like a changeling child in
Oh, yeah.
um, you know, Scottish Gaelic culture.
Mhm.
Um, that like, or is used as a way to explain like why the child wasn't thriving and either died or like was just a little weird, a
Mhm.
little off from everybody else because they were replaced by the fairies. That's why. Like I have a fairy child. That's why they're like a little strange. if they like survived into childhood and adulthood. But like so there we had a bunch of these different explanations for things that um nobody really knew what was going on. And like in ancient Greece, they were like, well, maybe it's the humors, right? And this was like a thing for a very long time was the balancing of the four humors, which I think were blood, bile, and then two other things that I can't remember off the top of my head. Mucus.
Oh. Oh, yep.
Uh,
Oh,
and
this is really testing my memory, actually.
I'm looking.
I think they even talked about it in, what was I playing? Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Ah,
They talked to the
blood.
philosophers.
Yeah, blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. So I was close with mucus.
Okay.
And so, uh, if those were balanced, then you were fine. And a lot of times I would balance those through like bloodletting and
Ugh,
such really
I, like,
good,
can't.
helpful things.
I can't
Yeah.
even think about it.
Thank God for modern science and all the
Oh,
things. All right. So until about the 1700s. So all of that was going on until about the 1700s. Ooh, another like really popular thing that I like in popular media that I'm thinking of is a good example of how mental health was treated is and of course this might be like dramatized or like played up more because it is a TV show. But in Bridgerton, it's the Queen Charlotte season that
oh, yeah.
depicts yeah, King George III's madness, right? And
Yep.
like to this day we still don't know exactly what it was. There's like, it could oh, maybe he was bipolar, he was schizophrenic, or it was actually caused by like some like physical disease that he had.
Mhm.
Um, but that's a great example of like he obviously didn't go into an asylum because he was a king.
Because he yeah.
But
Mhm.
where it was like they would beat you, whip you, basically torture you to try to get these things, behaviors, thoughts gone from your head. And a lot of times it just made it worse because
'Cause you're experiencing it's well, I think now we'd call it complex PTSD, right? Where you're
yeah.
already you already are, like, struggling, and then it's like, "What if we added more trauma? What if we made it
Uh-huh.
even worse?"
What if we made
I,
it worse?
have you watched Over the Garden Wall?
Yes.
Okay. The one of my favorite episodes, and I think the character is voiced by John Cleese, and he thinks that there's a ghost in his, like, giant mansion. And
Yes.
it turns out to well, and, like, he can hear screaming, like, he can see, like, its shadows or whatever. Like, spoiler alert in case you haven't watched it. It
Is
turns
his
out
wife.
to be it's a yes, and also an all-white peacock that's doing the screaming.
Oh, yeah. Wait, no, it's not
So,
his wife. It's another rich so, like
their houses
right?
are connected. That's
Yes,
what
their
it
houses
is.
are connected, that's
Yeah,
right. It's
but he
he's
was like, "The
yeah,
madness is taking me."
yeah, yeah. Um,
But it's things like that, like,
I
I
love that show.
wonder
Yeah,
even where, like it's such a good show.
yeah.
I wonder where, like, some of those phrases came from, right? Like,
Mhm.
madness,
Madhouse, like this
madhouse,
madhouse. Yep.
like, lunatic, lunacy, like, all of these, like, words, especially,
Well,
like,
don't
even
even get me started on lunatic and lunacy because I will tell you where those came from. Luna, lunar, the moon, right? The moon's
Ah, yes. I feel like I knew that, but now
yeah.
it's like things that have been so overused. Like even if
Mhm.
we're in sessions, I even hate saying
Like, "Oh,
like
crazy."
crazy. Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
always
I
like,
feel
"You're
I think
not crazy,
bonkers.
but"
Yeah.
You're not crazy, but that's crazy.
But that's
Like
crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
I'll be like, it drives me bonkers, or like I'm gonna
Yes.
lose my marbles. So we could
Yes.
even get into like a whole terminology subsection of like
Yeah. If I'm having
especially
a
like
mental
what
breakdown, like, yeah.
yes, right?
Mhm.
Exactly. So I bet like, yeah, even as you're talking about this and I bet that's where like a lot of those things started, but especially the moon. That's so interesting. I wonder how much
Isn't
it
that
aligned with
interesting?
women being witches also.
Probably 100%.
Yeah. Hmm.
Because, yeah, if you think the idea of, like well, even, like, the idea of, like, people go crazy during the full moon,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? Like,
In
but
in our defense, like
yeah,
we have weird days when it's a full moon. It's not
that
like
is
just a
true.
client thing. It's like everything is popping off.
The world is weird. In
Yeah.
fact, weird things even happen with, like, I think the best example was this past February with, it was a Friday the 13th.
Okay.
Remember? It was the Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year that
Mhm.
week. I feel like there was another thing too that was weird about that week that I was like, "What
My
the heck?"
birthday.
No.
My birthday was on Friday the 13th in February.
Yeah. But, like, it was, like, so much crazy shit happened that week with, like, our
Mhm.
clients. I was like,
Yep,
"What is going" and then apparently, like, I was talking to one of my clients, like, "Oh, like, there was also a weird, like, astrological thing that
of
happened," and I'm like,
course.
"The energies are just,
Yeah,
like, too much." Like, there is something to be said, I think, for that. And, like, of course, like, "Oh, well, maybe we're biased because 'cause we're like, oh, it's gonna be weird because of this stuff," but, like,
exactly, right?
no, like, an ungodly amount of things happened
Yeah.
that
With,
week.
like, everybody, right? It's
Yeah,
not like Christine and I are sitting here like, "Oh, it was, like, a rough week." Like, no,
like,
every single person, there was something going on.
with every single person that I saw, that Mackenzie was seeing, that other people in our practice shout out,
Mhm.
by the way, to Autism West Behavior Partners. If you are in
Yay!
need of therapy in Colorado, please look us up. Look at our link tree on any of our
Mhm.
social media pages. Um, we are taking clients.
Yeah, and they were, probably wanna be guests coming soon also.
Yes.
So, if you have
We get a client.
any areas you wanna well, specifically if you I almost said if you wanna call in. Oh my god. Is that, like, how old I am?
If you wanna like and comment, if you wanna
Yeah.
comment specific areas in which our colleagues, coworkers could talk about, we can interview them, please let us know.
Yeah.
Um, like, comment, and subscribe. But anyways, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, it was weird. Anyway, it's like
There's something to be s like, that's
there's
one of
something to
those
be said for it.
things yeah, when, like, everything is kind of, like, falling apart and somebody's like, "Oh, Mercury's in retrograde." I'm like, "Well, now it's starting to, like, feel like it makes sense."
The
And the
alignment the alignment between your quarter life crisis and Saturn returns.
That's true. If anybody's turning 27 this year, make sure
Yeah,
your
have
your
fun.
supports are in place.
Yeah, woof. And like some people I think get it a little bit earlier, a little bit later, but like,
Mhm,
yeah, quarter life crisis is real, and also Saturn return. It's lines up, and like, is it just that's this idea that like I was explaining earlier, like oh, it's shamanism, it's demons. Like,
mhm.
are we just now prescribing another sort of explanation to right? Like, oh, it's your
That's
Saturn
true.
returns, and that's why you're going through this. Versus like, oh no, it's also really documented that having a quarter life crisis at 27 and being like, I need to get my shit together
Mhm.
is real.
Right,
Like
exactly.
it's like part of like a developmental psychological thing.
Yes.
Um
And
yeah.
we'll get into it later, but this is why, like, I think I fell in love with existential therapy because, like, we just don't know, right? If somebody wants to come into session and they're talking about, like, oh, I like did tarot journaling this weekend and this is what I got, or I have, someone
Mhm.
who's like more Christian focused, like, I'm gonna, and I think like Christine and I do the same thing where it's like, I'm gonna go with like what the client is telling me.
Mhm.
But it's just so interesting to see like all of these different belief systems and how it's just like expanded over the course of like history. And then, of course, like in terms with like psychotherapy as well,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
needing to like pull it all in.
But it is interesting though, like and like we'll again probably touch on this more with like Carl Jung and the idea of synchronicity.
Yeah.
Like
Shadow work and the archetypes.
it's yeah, and the archetypes and stuff. Like I've had, yeah, people doing tarot reads and
Shit's crazy. Stuff's crazy.
it's it like aligns and I'm like, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Like synchronicity is very much real.
hmm
So but yeah, now we're into the early 1700s. What was initially like supposed to be just like shelters, like almshouses. Um, because probably a lot of people who had mental illness, as to this day,
hmm
this still happens, were probably homeless. They probably couldn't hold down a job or pick up a trade or whatever. And so they probably lived on the street as beggars and whatnot. And like this, also, you know what? I just want to mention this was not just happening to mentally ill people, but also physically. Yeah, it wasn't just
hmm
mentally disabled people, but also physically disabled people as well, in any way, shape, or form. So
If you were
it became
different or if
yeah.
you were not if you were neurodivergent, if you had any form of disability,
Mhm. Blind,
you're yeah, that's
c
wild.
s motor speech problems, clubbed foot,
Yep.
differently limbed, things like that. If you did not have a good supportive community, just kinda like the same, "Hey, guys, this has been going on for, since humans became a thing."
Mhm.
If you did not have a good supportive community, you were basically, like, left to the wolves.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and, like, honestly, I think churches also played a big part in this in a time in the sense of, like, helping keep people safe and fed.
Yeah.
Um, the
I think
idea that
that's
you
where
could
the
seek
seek asylum, yeah,
yeah,
that's where I
seek
thought you were
asylum or
going.
seek refuge in them, yeah,
Mhm.
um, became, a thing, but
Like in Hunchback of Notre Dame, by the way.
yeah, yeah, like in Notre Dame. Um, exactly that, except for fuck Frollo, he sucks.
Yeah. Oh,
Classic
man.
example of the church trying to take in people and you're like, "Oh, look at me, I'm a righteous, pious person," and actually not caring for them the way that they should.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Especially
these yeah.
oh, this is actually a good point because I think you even said for like, during this asylum era, this also potentially included people who, like, didn't speak English,
Oh,
and
yes.
and I think that would also tying it back to Hunchback
Immigrants,
of
people
Notre
who didn't
Dame,
speak
and
yeah.
yes, because 'cause I'm pretty sure Esmeralda would be considered, like, Romani at this
Mhm,
yeah, so it's exactly
mhm.
something like that where it's, like, the only place she could, like, genuinely seek refuge was she
The
thought
church.
yeah,
Yeah.
but alas, we all know what happened there too. I don't need to bring the Catholicism into it just yet. We can save
We
that for
can
another day.
we can do probably, again, a whole series
Yeah.
on religion and mental health and all that fun stuff,
Mhm,
that comes with that. Not that religion can't be a good thing for mental health, because I think religion can be a very good source of community
mhm,
and connection, and I think if we, there's transpersonal psychology, therapy where you're
mhm,
thinking about the spiritual, like, I think, um, there is a sense, that is important of, like, finding meaning or connection with, like, a higher self or a higher being or whatever you wanna say. I think that's all very important and can be very helpful, and I think also religion the organized religion that we have now was made to oppress people who weren't white rich men. So,
yeah,
um,
correct.
yes.
Yeah, especially in
Um,
this era, but
oh, yeah, 100% in this era.
100% in this, yeah.
But yeah, so they were, like, in asylums, and, um, eventually, by the 19th century, they're kinda like, "Hey, maybe we should, like, be treating these people with kindness and comfort instead of torturing them with ice baths," and,
Mhm.
um they would do, like, they would do, like, dump them in ice baths until they were, like, almost hypothermic, and then pick them and put them in, like, boiling hot water, like, to, like, shock the
Oh my
body.
god.
Uh, yeah, and eventually, like, electricity became a thing, so there was electroshock therapy, which is still around today, but only it's completely different than what it was before, and it's not TMS, it's not the transcranial magnetic thing. Um, there is electroshock therapy, they only use it if it is, like, you have done everything else and
Oh,
your depression
yes.
is still treatment resistant, and it is nothing like what they did back in the 1900s.
I think you get
Um,
put under for this one, right?
oh, yeah, it's, like, way more
Yeah,
and,
like, you
like,
are not awake.
you are not awake, the, like, amount of electricity they use is completely different, how they, like,
Mhm.
apply it, like, it's not just, like, electrodes, like, to it's completely different.
Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, it's super, super different, than what it is now, and like I said, it's used as a very last resort, uh,
Mhm.
if all other treatment methods have failed. Um, but yeah, electroshock therapy, being beaten, dehumanized, all these things. Eventually, it started going out, and it started with da, 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 da. Yeah. Do you want to talk about Nellie Bly?
Yeah, oh,
I'll let you go.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, like, somewhere obviously, like, between, like, so maybe it was, like, around 1800s going into the 1900s too, obviously we're getting like the birth of psychotherapy, but then
Mhm.
that's also where you're starting to see like white rooms, padded walls, straitjacket. Like that's something I'd have to like look more into, like the pipeline between the two.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but
Oh, yeah.
specifically with Nellie Bly, and I'll make sure that I have something pulled up so that I get it all correct essentially. But because before we were studying this, Christine and I were talking about like how journalists, like investigative reporters, would get involved in specifically like asylum era to kind of I think go into the concept and like physically go into the quote unquote madhouse
Mm.
and discover like what was actually going on in there, because I think it was very much like, well, like Christine said, it was basically imprisonment, so like nobody's coming
Yep.
in, nobody's going out, like unless you're done with treatment, which I don't even know what that would look like.
Yeah.
I don't know when they're
And a
like,
lot of
okay,
them,
you're all
there
done.
was yeah, there was no done with treatment either.
Yeah,
Um, a
yeah,
lot of time,
so
like yeah, which I will sorry, I am gonna let you talk, and I'm gonna stop info dumping, but
no, you're fine.
part of why all of a sudden we're like, "Oh, there's so many people who are autistic or this or that," like, we see it so much more, is because they're not being put into these places any longer,
Hmm.
by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Um, that's why. They're
exactly.
they're being they're they're more visible now. That's part of the reason. Again, we will touch on this topic way more in depth in another part. In depth, I mean, in another part. But yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, because now we have like much better conditions for wellness centers and whatnot. So, um, but what I think kind of like pulled us in about Nellie Bly in particular. So it was 1887. She went undercover into the Women's Lunatic Asylum. It's now Roosevelt Island, but it was Blackwell's Island back in the day. She feigned insanity in order to again kind of infiltrate, see what's going on. Um, what a like for being a journalist in 1887, like way ahead of her time, by the way,
Right? Yeah.
way ahead of her time. Um, and
Shout
some
out
of
women
shout
who
out
are
women
awesome.
for doing the damn thing.
Doing the damn thing.
Um, I was trying to see especially or like specifically what she feigned. So I love this about her. She successfully duped doctors, judges, and the boarding house staff, faking amnesia and her erratic behavior. When she was deemed insane, she was then committed. One of the first things that kind of comes up when you look at this too is that she noticed that almost immediately a lot of people are perfectly sane by whatever the standards were. Um,
Mhm.
Poor women and non-English speaking immigrants.
Yep.
So if we're talking about the history of psychotherapy and history of this country, some
Mhm.
things still tend to repeat, it seems.
Yeah.
So, but she basically, when she was staying in, I don't know, actually, I'll check and see how long I think it was a few weeks that,
Says
how
10
long?
days.
It was 10 days. Okay. Um, and the main things that she like, well, the top three things that she went over in her report were the brutal treatments, the inhumane living conditions, and then neglect of the vulnerable. So in particular, she realized that many women were completely sane. Um, Shout out PMDD and PMS, probably. Um, they
The
had,
hysteria, the hysteria.
yeah, she has the hysterics, the madness.
Yes, which
Uh,
is one of my favorite historical facts that, oh, to treat hysteria, like, it was doctors were like, "Hmm, we prescribe masturbation. Here's a
yeah,
vibrator. Go out crazy." It's like, oh, so really, like, hysteria was just probably unsatisfied women, and, like, we
yeah.
also know that, like, yes, masturbation helps, like, during your period with cramping
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, and so
Yeah.
anyways, yeah.
It's endorphins. It's
It's
nothing to be
endorphins.
ashamed about. Well, and especially, well, you hit like a good topic because like the part where she talks about neglect of the vulnerable, sometimes
Mhm.
it was straight up women that were like unwed and they were seen almost as like a burden to their families, and they were like, well, you're not getting married and you're not working, so I guess we're just going to send you off to the asylum and good luck.
Yep. Have fun.
Maybe,
Good
yeah,
luck.
maybe when you come out you'll be able to find you a husband. um but similar to what Christine was saying before, freezing cold baths,
Mhm.
often choked, beaten, or tied together with heavy ropes, which I believe eventually led to the invention of the straitjacket. Um, and then for inhumane living, it looks like, yep, spoiled food. They had to sit up, or oh my gosh, yeah, had to sit on hard wooden benches for up to 14 hours a day without speaking or moving. Oh my god. Can you imagine, like, having ADHD and they're like, "This will fix you, surely."
You're just like you eventually just
Like
dissociate. Mhm.
exactly. I think that's, like, to that point too, I feel like that's eventually what they wanted, right? If
Yeah.
you
Oh, they
I
just wanted you quiet
they
and
yes, yeah. And
yep.
that's like I hate using like this analogy specifically, but like when you're taming a wild horse, right? You're like you just want it to listen, you like want to be able to ride it and instruct it to do what you need to do, but like you're breaking a human being essentially, right? You're
Yep.
like doing these specific types of like treatments and torture in order to, as long as like you sit there and look pretty ultimately, I think is what Nellie was kind of talking about at that point.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but I think well, essentially like when she came out with her article in the New York World newspaper, um, basically like it caused this huge outburst or like outrage, I guess I would say.
Mhm.
Um, essentially again nobody knew what was going on inside, so this was like the first peek into like, oh, what are they actually doing to people in there.
Mhm.
um Again, since so many people were healthy and seen as like sane and maybe just didn't speak English and had just emigrated to America, things like that, where it's
Yeah.
like, but it's torture in order to get
Mhm.
people to follow the social norms.
Mhm. Yeah. And, we're talking about like, "Oh, did they come out or not?" I was just looking it up and then I found some good information, um, about the lobotomy,
Ooh. Oh.
because this was also going on this so the lobotomy didn't start until 1935, but it definitely ended by the, like, 50s, 60s, but this was, you know and it did happen more to women,
Mhm.
especially women who didn't quite fit into the societal, like, women should be seen, not her, blah, 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 all this stuff. We just were saying, like, these are poor women. These are women who maybe just like, yeah, they didn't get married. And it's like, well, you don't serve any more function. So to the asylum with you. And,
Or didn't like
this
men, by the way.
I was about to say, or it's not because they just couldn't get married, it's because they didn't want to marry a man.
Mhm.
They didn't like men, they liked women. Um, this also happened with well, I think being a gay man was a lot easier to hide because you could just um get married and
Yes.
then do what you will because as long as you had money.
Mhm.
Well, it's probably easier to hide if you had money and affluence and
Yeah.
all the things. But uh if you were a gay woman, how many of the "Oh, that's just my I love her so much. Look at" and the historians are like, "Look at these gals. They're the best pals," that kinda thing.
They're 2 best
Um,
friends being
they're 2
roommates.
best friends being roommates. They love each other, but in a
Mhm.
friend way.
But in a
Um,
yes, nothing
yes,
bad.
not in a sapphic way. And
No.
so no. Um, and so a lot of these, you know, women that ended up in the asylum that were poor or, yeah, immigrants that didn't speak English by, like, the 1930s, beginning of the 1930s, into the 40s and 50s, they were getting lobotomized. So yeah, they were put into the asylum, gone through all these treatments. When those treatments didn't work, they were then lobotomized. In fact, like I think lobotomies became the first like, oh, we should just do that.
Yeah.
Um, and then sent back out into the world. And so yeah, the lobotomy was invented in 1935 by Antonio Egas Moniz, who originally called it a leucotomy.
Oh.
It was designed to treat severe mental illness by severing nerve pathways connecting the frontal lobe to the rest of the brain. So that's great because the frontal lobe, your prefrontal cortex, does a lot of things for you, like inhibition, control, impulsivity, executive functioning, decision making, um, And a lot of times, yeah, people would get these lobotomies and they would become almost like childlike
Mhm.
and or they would just get worse. Um,
I think it was one of the Kennedys, maybe, and even George Clooney's let me fact check myself. George Clooney's grandma?
oh, it is one of the Kennedys. It is Rosemary Kennedy, RFK Jr.'s
Hmm.
aunt, I
Okay,
believe.
okay. Oh, is he, like, close to bringing back lobotomies?
Hope not. Oh my god.
I but
Well,
that's, like oh, man,
he wants
that's
to
one
do
of those
away with,
things.
antidepressants, and so,
That's right. Yeah. So I
um
th but even, that's such a good example, and, if you're listening and you haven't, heard of, this specifically before, I would start even, with her in particular because it
Oh.
I think where they said she just went from, she might have been struggling with anxiety and depression, and
Mhm,
but she obviously was, independent and, could do things for herself, and then it immediately transitioned to maybe even, wheelchair bound by that point,
mhm,
and,
mhm.
it was basically you're just like Christine saying, you're taking out your prefrontal cortex, where
Yep.
that has, by the way, taken 25 years to
Mature. Yeah.
mature. So,
If not more. Some of the newer research shows that, oh, maybe not until even 30 does it really
yep.
get
Especially for
there.
neurodivergence, by the way.
Yep, yep. So yeah, apparently he injected alcohol into the brain to destroy the
Oh,
nerve fibers, which sounds awful.
oh my god.
Ugh. I mean, any lobotomy sounds awful. And nowadays, the us millennials and the Gen Zs, we joke about getting a lobotomy and stuff. And I don't know. I think it's a funny joke because I like dark humor, and also like
Mhm,
maybe we shouldn't joke about it because awful stuff.
mhm.
And then two American neurologists, Walter Freeman and James Watts, modified the technique and coined the term lobotomy, performing the first prefrontal. That was in 1936. And then from and then Freeman developed the infamous one, the transorbital. I can't talk. Transorbital, the one that goes in through your eye here,
Mhm.
into your eye here, and into the
Oh,
brain. Yes, you can access your brain that way. Ice pick lobotomy, which allowed the procedure to be performed quickly through the eye socket without traditional surgery. Fun story. So they would put the pick into your eye, into your brain, and just kind of go swirl it around up in there. Swirl it around up in there. Okay. Just scramble it.
the
Mm.
why? Why does that seem like a they're like, "We don't know what else to do with the brain, so what if we just completely messed with it and
Yeah.
hope
What
for
if
the
we just
best?"
like gave you permanent brain damage? That should
Yeah.
fix it, right?
Mhm.
Um, I have a personal story. My great grandmother, my dad's grandmother, did have a lobotomy.
Really?
Yes. He only knew her after she was lobotomized, my dad. Um, and, she was lobotomized because she had apparently at the time, it, they said she was schizophrenic. It's actually probably more likely that she was bipolar
Oh, okay.
because we didn't have the name for that
Yep.
back in the day.
Mhm.
It was you were schizophrenic and that's it. And in fact, autism wasn't, it was all just you were schizophrenic for a very long time.
Mhm.
Um, but she had a lobotomy and she was able to still, live her normal life, like, she had her husband and, whatever, but my dad says that, what he remembers of her, she was, very childish,
Okay. I was
in
like
her,
a reset.
yeah, she was sweet and kind and, didn't, ever do anything or say anything, but, um, she was very childish in the fact that, she couldn't, have a lot of, in-depth conversations of
Mm.
things, and, would say silly things that were, or deemed silly, and, um, he remembers his grandfather, she would, say stuff, and he'd be like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about, you're just stupid," and stuff like that, yeah,
Oh.
it was really sad. Um, in fact, now I'm like, honestly, I think my grandmother was ADHD. My
Mhm.
grandfather, who we know he definitely had OCD, was probably also autistic. And so I theorized that she was probably autistic in some way, shape, or form,
Yep.
and not
Mhm.
actually well, she could also be bipolar and or schizophrenic if they're
Yep.
comorbid, but, she was actually probably autistic. Um, as I'm autistic and ADHD, and I definitely got it from my dad. Uh, love you, dad.
I do love
Um,
the yeah, if we could get all of our dads tested. I think I recently told my dad, like, I wish so badly, because my dad was born in 1950. So
mhm,
and I've told him so many times, like, "I wish you could have been tested for ADHD." I feel like it would have, like, solved probably
so many of your
so
problems.
many yes.
Right.
And this man looks at me and he goes, "Well, I just needed to focus more." I'm like, "Okay. Alright. I'm sorry."
You're right. Too bad you
I'm
have a
like
disability that makes that hard.
yeah, I'm, like, crazy that, like, you were born with something that keeps you from focusing in the way that you need to, but that's okay.
Yep.
No, I think we need to start, like, a whole group of, we're gonna start, assessing everybody's dads. I think
Yeah.
anybody
It's
born in
always the
19
dads. It's
it's
so
always
funny.
the dads.
It's always the
What's
dads.
your dad's special interest, by the way?
Let's see, lots of things. But he has a stamp collection.
Oh my god, I love that.
uh,
Are they
and
in
he can talk
binders?
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
He has a stamp collection. I don't know, like, if he still actively collects, but I did buy him, like, a stamp from the Vatican, so I was like, "Here's a very rare stamp that you can't get,"
That's
when
cool.
I went there. He could probably talk your ear off about the banking world because that's, like, what he did for a long time, and finances. He knows a lot about, like, economics and stuff like that. Um, he I would say more recently, special interests have been like art because he was a docent at the sculpture park in St. Louis
Mm.
for a long time. And then now he works at the Humane Society. Well, he doesn't work, but he volunteers at the Humane Society. So he likes, talking about that and like all the cool stuff he gets to tell the kids. Um, but yeah,
That's cute.
yeah. I was like, yeah. And then like I introduced him to he went out and bought the exact same one from Hobby
Is that a
Lobby.
Nido?
Something like that. Yeah, it's a Neato. It's like one of
Okay.
those squishy things. I brought this home with me like, I think 2 years ago for Christmas, and I was like, "Just try it." He's like, "I really like this." And then he went to Hobby Lobby where I bought it or no, I bought it at Hobby Lobby here while I was in town, because
Okay.
I forgot to bring any STEM toys with me. And he was like, "I really like this." And he went out and bought one for himself.
Really?
And he uses it now, and he's like, I really like that. I'm glad that you told me about it." I'm like,
Oh
you've
my
probably been
god.
missing this your entire life.
I was gonna say, is that what I need to get, like, my dad and stepdad for birthdays and
Maybe.
stuff? I'm just sending
Yeah,
them, like, a Nido care package.
yeah. This will help with all the things. Um, anyways, back to it. Uh, great-grandmother was lobotomized. But anyways, we stopped doing this procedure in the 1950s and 60s because it was highly disputed, because of the permanent severe side effects, including apathy, personality changes, and intellectual impairment.
Are we
No duh.
surprised? Are we
Yep.
surprised? I
Are we
think,
surprised?
this might be, like maybe this is a portion of part 2, because even when I'm thinking about Freud, so when his interpretation of dreams, that came out in 1899,
Mhm.
and more of his work came out in, like, the 20s and 30s. So I'm even thinking of, like, okay, so if I'm a patient of Freud, and I'll do more
Mhm.
research on this, is he, like we're doing talk therapy, he's doing psychoanalysis, he's interpreting my dreams. Does that mean if the talk therapy doesn't work, he's sending me for a lobotomy? Did Freud believe in lobotomies?
I don't know. We'll have to
Freud
find that
and
out. But I think this will definitely have to be part 2. Um,
a
a part
nice
2
rabbit
where we
hole.
talk about where we talk about the in deinstitutionalization of it all, um, which came about the 1950s to present, in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, I think,
Mhm.
because one from it started with Nellie Bly, but then pretty much ended with, is it Geraldo or Geraldo?
Geraldo Rivera?
Geraldo Rivera,
Yep.
yeah. going into the Willowbrook State School and exposing the footage of the children um, that there who had what it was intellectual disabilities,
Mhm.
intellectual and developmental disabilities. Yeah.
Which, there's another podcast that we can link in this one too. I it's one of the, like, true crime adjacent type,
Mm-hmm.
but they
Mm-hmm.
talk about a school, I believe it was in China, where it's touted as this, like, highly academic, like, "Send your kids here if you want them to, like, excel and go to university and yada yada." And I think for any of the kids that are sent there because of their behavioral issues, they discovered that there was, like, a downstairs portion of the school that was, like, torture, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's, like, things that we, like, still have not truly gotten away from, which I think for us, like, being in this field, absolutely baffling. Like, if I found
Yeah.
out that one of the kiddos that we work with was undergoing any sort of treatment like this, like, I'm burning this place to the ground, essentially.
Yeah. But yeah, they basically were like, "Oh, there's severe overcrowding, filthy conditions. The children were neglected. They were
Mhm.
just left naked, sitting in their own waste. Probably were also abused and also neglected." And when this came out, like the public was like, "Whoa, not okay." Um, and it led to like an overhaul in improving care for intellectual and developmentally disabled people.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, institutionalization became a thing of the past, and now we're at where we're at now, which is this combination of the biopsychosocial model
Mhm.
combining psychotherapy and biologic intervention medication, which there is a bucket load of research that shows that medication can be effective on its own and that therapy can be effective on its own. But when we combine both medication and therapy, that is when they are the most effective. They work
Mhm.
best when they are put together in tandem. And nowadays, the issue now, though, is without the institutions, there's less ability to hospitalize people. There's not enough beds, things like this. For more severe mental illness, that's why we see, homelessness.
Mhm.
Truly, I think the majority of homeless people are actually just severely mental ill people who are lacking resources because they have nowhere. Their family has been like, we can't do this anymore. They don't have access to, you got to have an address to be able to do all kinds of things like
Mhm.
get Medicaid, get all kinds of resources, and also, so if they're not getting medication, they could be just also just so in their own world sometimes that like they would need a lot of outside intervention to get them the help
Yeah.
that they need. Um, and so they end up homeless and or in the prison pipeline.
Yep. Yeah. I think this was something I was, like, kind of telling Christine about too around that era of, like, the deinstitutionalization where
Mhm.
obviously they're like, "Oh, we gotta get rid of this," like,
Oh, so they just like
we
we're like,
can't be.
bye.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally, right? And I
Have
think
fun living on the streets.
that's and my mom grew up in Detroit, and I think there was, like, a pretty decently sized, like, asylum or, like, psych hospital that they closed, and
Mhm.
that's what she was telling me, that, like, it was basically, like, well, like, group homes I don't think were a thing yet. They didn't really have
Mhm.
much in terms of shelters at that point, so they're
Yeah, or like any
like.
kind of like residential care or yeah, group
Exactly.
home.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's the whole, like, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, and then, like, the homelessness population just exploded, and we're still, like, struggling with it, right? I think even,
Yeah.
like, with me being in Denver, it's been a part of the
Mhm.
conversation for, like, the mayor's office, the governor. It's all things that we're trying to, like, still figure out to this day because, like, mental health just wasn't taken seriously for this amount of
And like,
time.
yeah, I mean, talking to my parents, my dad told me he's like, I was severely depressed, like when you were born, all this stuff. And I was like, why didn't you go to therapy? He's like, oh, because you didn't.
Right.
It
Mhm.
was
Yep.
still super like you had a problem if you went to
Mhm.
therapy. And it most likely would go on your, like, your record and, like, your job could see it and stuff, like and this was in the 1990s, y'all, like, it
Yeah,
was
this
still
isn't that long ago.
very no, it was still very, very highly stigmatized that, like, if you were not okay if you went to
Mhm.
therapy and you probably couldn't have a job and stuff, and it hasn't really been in I wanna say in the last I feel like 20 years is being
Yeah,
gracious.
I mean, well, even when you say that, I was just watching something on, like, when Britney Spears had, like, her people love to talk about, like, "Oh, she shaved her head. Oh, she, like, went, quote, unquote, crazy." Things
Mhm.
like that where it's like, if we're still watching someone have, like, an active breakdown and we're still, like, making humor out of it, or I don't know. It's just wild to me that, like, so many things are not taken seriously when we've had, like, so much discourse.
Or things are taken too seriously.
True, right? Yeah.
Like, the fact like, saying trans of course, that's part of the this is where we have qualms probably with the DSM,
Oh, yeah.
saying that trans people are just mentally ill and
Mhm.
that they just need treatment so that they're not trans anymore when, you know, the DSM, the APA is like said like, okay, no, like we have to give them a diagnosis. It's gender dysphoria, right? Like
Mhm.
disorder. And so that adds to that stigma. But what people neglect is also then the body of research that shows, hey, the treatment for gender dysphoria is to help the person become or like, take on the gender in which they feel that they are
Right,
and support
yeah.
that and validate that. Like,
Oh, you mean letting
um,
them transition?
letting them transition as much or as little as they want to and just being like,
Mhm.
yeah, calling them by the name that they prefer and the pronouns that they prefer does then they don't have the dysphoria anymore.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
Whoa, it can cure them. Um, but, like, yeah, or, like, that's what I'm saying, like, it's too, like, "Oh, well, that's a mental illness. They're just mentally ill, and they need to be," you
Mhm.
know, conversion therapy.
Oh,
Gayness is just a mental illness, and you need to be converted back, right? Like, that's when I'm saying, like, it's taken too like, it's being weaponized, right? Like,
yeah.
I feel like it started to get destigmatized, and now it's like, well, because it's destigmatized, therapy speak is in the lexicon of
Yep.
everybody, right? Like, now it's, like, being turned around and being weaponized of, like, well and continuing to, like, they are other. They're just
Mhm.
sick, right? Same thing with, like, mass shootings. "Oh, well, they're mentally ill, mental ill, mental ill." If I hear
Yeah.
one more congressperson be like, "It's not a gun problem, it's a mental health issue," I'm like, "Then why are you defunding mental health?
Correct. And
Why
how
are
is
you
it, like,
making"
so easy to go get a weapon, by the way?
Yeah. Why are you making it why one is mental I'm gonna get into it, but why are you defunding mental health things? Why are you making it harder for people to get access to mental health because they can't afford their insurance, right? Why are you kicking people off of Medicaid who could
Mhm.
be using yeah. If it's a
This
mental
is
health issue, then like don't be doing that.
Yeah. No, and this is why, like, consistently, like, places like I wanna say, like, Sweden and Finland, like, are some
Mhm.
of the places that consistently show up on, like, the happiest countries in the world because they fund mental health, because they, like, take care of their
And
people.
I was gonna say, and because like a lot of the people's basic needs are met.
Yeah,
Housing, they
and
don't have to worry about housing so much. They don't have to worry about income so much. They don't have to worry about their health care, right? Like all these things are either affordable, they provide stipend like to anybody who's having, a hard time. Like
Mhm.
there's something to be said about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, and shout out to all the social workers that are in the trenches, in the community,
Yeah.
helping them meet those needs
With the very limited resources
with
that they
limited
have
resources.
that are
Well,
just getting more and more limited. Yeah.
yeah. No, that's and, I feel like and that's probably where we'll, like, pick up next time too in terms of, like,
Hmm.
that the modern era of, like, what Christine and I do in terms of, like, counseling, and
Hmm.
then how, like obviously how, like, our form of therapy, talk therapy, art therapy, how those things help, but also, like, the world of social work and how, of, like, blending all of these, like, resources are so important in order to, like, build some sort of, like, stability or at least, like, a more solid foundation
Yeah.
instead of just saying, like, "Oh, we're just gonna defund all of these things because 'cause they're evil." I don't I don't know. I don't
because
know
it's
why
not
you would be
important.
like, right, yeah. They're like,
It's not
"No,
important.
you don't need your
Yeah.
you don't need your medication. You don't need therapy.
No. You
You're
don't need
okay."
therapy. Just, you should just join the,
Yeah.
all money to the military industrial complex. That should
Yeah.
be fine.
Yeah.
But
Oh my
yeah,
god, the PTSD and Vietnam War thing, I'm adding to part 2 also.
yeah. Um, I know we could also talk about like diagnosis because all we focused on so far is like the diagnoses of it went from you got demons in your blood to like you're just a lunatic. You're
Yeah.
insane. Like, what is
Mhm.
lunacy? What is insanity? Hysteria. Then to like, well, they're schizophrenic, right? What's schizophrenia? And then
Mhm.
now we have a whole fat book about diagnoses and like how even now still diagnosing mental illness is hard
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and kind of controversial because it's like, okay, what if you're just having like you've just had a lost your job and like there's nothing
Mhm.
wrong with you. You're just you need to go like talk to or like your parent died and you're just going through normal bereavement. You just need to talk to somebody about how am I can't if
I'm
we're
not
gonna have
gonna
your
fake a
insurance
diagnosis.
right? Like if we're gonna have your insurance and that's what Z codes are great for, but if you're gonna have
Yeah.
your insurance cover this, we have to have a diagnosis. That's the issue with the medical model. Like
Yeah.
we moved into like I think like science and medicine has done wonders for the field of psychotherapy and also it is limiting in the sense that like oh we're stuck in this medical model instead of more like a
Mhm.
social model.
Yeah.
Um and I mean that's kind of the whole point of the Arts and Minds Collective is
Mhm.
to provide, get the funding that is out there and provide resources for people and build a sense of community and focus more on the social aspect of it versus the medical aspect
Yeah.
of it. But I feel like you got to understand the medical aspect of it to then understand
Totally.
like why there needs to be a push for the social. So,
Right. It's like having doing your research into like a medical issue that's going on and then, trying out different antibiotics and what have you, like that's therapy.
mhm,
That's trying out different forms of like therapy or again, like having a sense of community. Christine runs a D&D group that I feel like, a lot of people have responded well to because it's like even if it's like 1 hour a week, you're at least
mhm,
like getting that sense of like, oh, I can talk to like-minded people and do something that's fun and that I actually enjoy. That's
mhm.
therapy. Like those things
Yeah.
all count.
Yeah. That's why we're trying to start we've been trying for a while now to get people interested in the group that one of our colleagues, Matt, wants to run called
Mhm.
Collective Community or
Yeah.
Community Collective, one of
Community
those two
collective?
things. I'll post it.
CC?
Yeah, where it's just like, hey, like let's get together, let's do some art digitally with these like digital art tools, and like just not be alone in this
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Period.
this
Like, what
experience of being a human right now, right? Like, it's all therapeutic. So
Mhm.
yeah. All right. So for tune in 2 weeks for part two, where we
Yeah.
discuss the modern era of psychotherapy and like what that looks like and like what we do.
We won't get too into Freud, I promise. We don't do Freud around here.
No, which is so funny. Um, because I do have a friend who's from Ireland who's like, that's all they do is
Really?
psychoanalytic. Yeah. And like,
The only thing I'll do is dream analysis. I feel like he,
yeah,
like, knocked it out of the park there, but I can get behind, like, the ego and da 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 da, but, like, the whole I don't know.
psychosexual aspect of
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, not my favorite thing that we had to learn over the course of our and that's why I was, like, so much more focused on, Carl Jung because he's like 'cause being a student of Freud, he's like, "I'll take this, but maybe I'm gonna do it better."
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, me and this person were like, okay. He's like Young, no, absolutely not. And I'm like Freud, no, absolutely not. I'm a Jungian through and
Mhm.
through to the day that I die. To the point in which I'm like, maybe I want to get a doctorate in Jungian psychology, like a crazy
Like
person. See, that's me
like, y
using
yeah.
like a lunatic.
That's it. Alright. You've
Yep,
heard it
that's
here
it.
first. Christine is off to the asylum.
Yep, put me in the asylum now. I'm crazy.
Yeah, I'll call
I
a
am.
young priest and an old priest to come help
Yep.
you.
Exorcise the demons from me about getting
Mhm.
a doctorate in such a niche area
Yeah,
from one school that exists. Uh, uh, yeah, I think we're both Jungian girls through and
Oh,
through.
big time. Yeah.
Um, and we're like, Freud did a lot. And Freud also, we can be like, that's nice, Freud, thank you. And then be
Yeah.
like, and then this is where we built upon that and why I did it better.
Yes, exactly,
Yep.
and why I only use him for dream analysis.
Yep. I use Jung for dream analysis.
That's oh, I have some things to share with you after that then.
Okay, cool. Alrighty. Well, I have been Christine Thorpe,
I have been Mackenzie Clough.
and thank you for joining us on part one of What is Mental Health with in the podcast, The Arts and Minds Collective. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.